Hey everyone, it's David Wint here from Canuck Play. It is Tuesday, and I do know that last night I tweeted out that I wanted to do this video tomorrow, Wednesday, but it turns out that the time tomorrow is going to be pretty hectic, and instead of pushing it off until later in the week, I decided to bring it in early and just give you a quick update. But also I wanted to go back over some of the Q&A items that came up during the past week. So in terms of the status update for the title and certification, nothing has really changed from last time. It's still going through certification. I'm still working on artwork and things to send to Sony, and so I think like last time we're in pretty good shape for a end of month certification. Just something that I wanted to also clarify with what certification actually means. When the title is certified, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's finished. In fact, video games are rarely finished. They're always an ongoing process, and you're always iterating on them, and you're always trying to improve them, and you've always got content updates and that sort of thing. So certification doesn't necessarily mean that nothing else happens after the fact. Certification just means that the title has met all of the minimum requirements for that platform in terms of dialogue messaging and button icons, and how does it handle controller disconnects and that sort of thing. While the game has been going through certification, I have actually still been working on the game code and updating it and trying to make improvements where I can, and even adding a couple of new little features. So certification doesn't mean the end, it really kind of just means it's a new beginning. Last Wednesday, I did a Q&A video that was about 30 minutes long. So not only was the video really way too long, but I made some mistakes. I didn't really do a very good job of explaining myself for some of the questions, and I don't think that I did a good job in getting across what I meant, but also just simply answering some of the questions. I misunderstood some of the questions. So I would like to quickly go over some of those items. Nintendo Switch. Yes, I am looking at Nintendo Switch. I do have a NDA agreement with them right now. I'm putting together a submission package for them. You have to go through a kind of a pre-approval process before you can move on to the Switch. I've spoken to them about hardware costs, that sort of thing. They've assured me that there is not really a barrier to entry for the Switch in terms of purchasing hardware, so that's good news. It was an issue when it came to Sony, but Nintendo has assured me that's not the case. So I am continuing to look at the Switch. Franchise mode is arguably the #1 request that I have been seeing. I know that the game doesn't have one. It has a seasonal play mode, which records statistics and lets you play through seasons. But when the season is over and a champion has been awarded, you reset everything and you start again. So it's not a franchise mode, it's just seasonal play. I have a couple of ideas as to what I would like to try to do with franchise mode. But franchise mode is a really, really big feature. I have some documentation that I put together. It's about 50 pages or so of design documentation. And the reality is that for me to do that, you're probably looking at about a year's worth of work on that just by itself. So that would mean that I'm not doing other features, I'm not doing more animations, I'm not trying to improve the gameplay, I'm not doing anything else but franchise mode. So there's that option. The other option that I'm investigating is purchasing or licensing an existing franchise mode. There are websites out there that offer franchise mode play for North American football. An idea that I've been throwing around is potentially licensing some of their back-end code. They have the code already written for doing drafts and training camps and managing schedules and selling hot dogs and whatever else. And those are really, really in-depth, and they specialize in that area of gameplay. So I think it's an option I need to explore, because if I could take their expertise in franchise mode and merge it with my building of the core on the field game, I think we'd have a really good experience. But it's something I need to continue to look at. Can you edit players? Yes, you can edit players. We have in the game, you'll find a player editor and a team editor and a uniform editor. And player editing allows you to do things like change their weight and build and that sort of thing. The different player models, Maximum Football has different player models, so you can switch different player models. So if you want all of your players to look like a lineman, you can do that if you want. You can also change their ratings. So there's a whole screen where you can go through all the different sliders and change their ratings. All the teams and all the players are unique. Every team has its own roster, and every roster is made up of unique players. So some teams will have a better quarterback than others. Some teams will have a better running back than others. But those are just the defaults that I've sent you. There's nothing that stops you from going in and changing those and doing what you'd like with that. So yes, there's Player Editor. So in terms of the professional license, I did get asked for some clarity. The previous video that I did, I really focused on one item that they brought up, and that was the style of game that they wanted. The reality is that there was more to it than just the style of game. There were questions around who would own the project, who would pay for the development, who would pay for the advertising, what the royalty fees were going to be. There were many challenges involved in getting that done. There was also the players union needed to be involved, and it was difficult to speak to them. I still have not spoken to anybody from the players union. So many challenges, and it's kind of a long story that I didn't want to use the whole video for. So I just really focused my answer on that one part. Indoor football, I did speak a little while ago to the Indoor Football League and had a quick conversation with them. They really don't think that a video game fits into their plans right now. That's really all that they wanted to go into with that, so that's the only answer that I have. But I did ask them about it, and I did have a conversation about it. In terms of adding a generic indoor football experience to the title, it's something I'm going to look at down the road. There is the game itself, as I mentioned, supports 8-on-8 indoor football, but none of the environments are there, none of the playbooks are there. Some of the AI is a little different in terms of play calling and things like that. But as a general rule, the game itself supports it internally. It just needs to be fleshed out with screens and environments and that sort of thing. So it's something I'm going to look at in the future. So the next question was a little bit of clarity around customized playbooks. That is something that I'm looking to do for content update. So the game internally in the code already supports customized playbooks. Every team has its own playbook. Every team has its own different coaching profile. But there are no screens for you to edit those things in the game. A couple of months ago, when I had an opportunity to add some new functionality to the game, I decided that from the list of things that I could do, that the uniform editor had the most appeal, I thought, to the majority of people, being able to customize the look of your team. But certainly the ability to edit your play groups and set up your coaching profile is very important, especially when you're trying to replicate real football. So that's going to be coming as a first content update. So on its way. So the next question is new animations. Yes, there are many new animations in the game this year compared to last. You will see new animations for blocking, catching, and the fair catch. The fair catch wasn't in the game last year, so obviously when I added it this year, it needed an animation, so we added a new animation for that. That's kind of obvious. You'll see stiff arms and more juke moves. You will see different fumble recovery animations. You will see different types of tackles this year. So there are many more new animations being added in, and I'm adding more animations in as often as I can. Canuck has a motion capture system, and I am now working with an animator that is helping out where he can. So there's a lot of opportunity to add and improve the animations. Negative feedback. I kind of made a mess of that answer previously. I absolutely did not do a very good job of expressing what I meant. So I'd like to take a few minutes and just try that one again, and hopefully this will make more sense and be more clear as to how I deal with it. I look at feedback, and I think there's a spectrum of feedback. On this end of the spectrum, you have the group that is very happy with the game. They like where it's going. They offer suggestions, but it's you've already got a customer base there, and they're really interested in the title, and they've already committed to buy. And then way on the far end of the spectrum, you get trolls, and they are just there to cause trouble. But in the middle, the majority are people that have constructive criticisms, and they are offering suggestions, and they're really just trying to help. And that is a form of negative feedback. They're pointing out something that's wrong with the game, but they're pointing it out in order to say, hey, what are you doing about this? Or can you address this? Or this doesn't seem right, can you fix it? It's still negative feedback, but it's presented as a criticism and a critique that is something that they're just simply trying to help. And that is where I try to focus my attentions. The happy customers, I wish I had a lot more of them. I really want more of those folks. The trolls, I don't spend a lot of time with, or at least I try not to spend any time with. I try not to let them get to me. And I try to worry about the people that are legitimately trying to offer help and give me feedback and give suggestions. A couple of examples of that, as I mentioned previously, I like to bring people into the cube and have them sit down and play the game and watch what they're doing and talk to them and get direct feedback. The internet's kind of not the best possible place to get feedback from, but when you're sitting with somebody on the same couch and they're playing the game and you can talk to them, that's really ideal. And one of the bits of feedback that I had was about the navigation on the user interface between button groups. So if you have a list of buttons, they weren't sure which one they were on. So they brought that up. That is negative feedback, but they're bringing it up in a way that is trying to help and ask a question and maybe make a suggestion along the way. Did actually address that. Now as you move up and down the menu list, the button will pulse slightly. The text on the button will kind of pulse very slightly, and it's a better indication. In terms of feedback coming from the internet, one of the more common requests was changing the way that you call timeouts. When Canadian Football 17 was first launched, the timeout button was the Y button, so all you ever had to do was push Y and it would call a timeout. Well, that was causing some issues for people. So the request was put the timeout on the pause menu. So that's what I did. I put the timeout on the pause menu. And then following this year coming up, I got some more feedback as to where that timeout button should be. And now you have the timeout, you call it through, on the Xbox One, you call it via the profile button. And on the PS4, you push the big touchpad. You have to push on the touchpad, not just touch it. So that is a little bit more in line with what people were asking for. And that is the type of feedback that I'm looking for. That is the type of feedback that I think helps me. Again, I try not to let the trolls rule my life. It's sometimes hard, you know, that's their job, is to get under your skin. But really, I do try to listen to all types of feedback, and I hope that the intent with most of it is, let's try to make a better game, and I try to accommodate what I can. So one of the other questions that I had that I would like to take another shot at is the question, is the game industry set up for independent developers? And there's kind of two parts to that question, but yes, I do think it is set up to help independent developers to a degree. Obviously, in order to build big games, you need funding, and funding for independent developers is hard to come by. That really limits in many ways, well, maybe not limits is the wrong word, it hinders what some independent developers can do without all those big resources of major studios. But where I think independent developers have an opportunity is because they are smaller and they have the ability to work on titles that a large studio would probably never take on. Last year when I released Canadian Football 17, well, Canadian football is a small market. It's not going to sell gazillions of copies, and so really large studios would probably never do it. But an independent developer with a modest investment and a lot of time can bring that to market. So I think that is the type of thing that independent developers can really cling on to and work on. The other thing that I think helps independent developers is that there's a wide variety of tools out there that are free. So no cost for things like Unity or Unreal or Visual Studio or Blender. You know, those off the top of my head are the basic tools that you would need to build a game. You also have the platform first-party people that are now on board with independent developers. Microsoft and Sony and Nintendo, they understand that indie developers deserve a shot, and in some cases they will financially assist you. Microsoft really got Canuck Play off its feet by paying for the development kits, so that was a big boost. That's really what got us started. So in terms of indie developers, I think they have advantages that a big studio doesn't have. Their big challenge is always going to be funding. Where do you get the money to hire staff? But I think even big studios have that too. So hopefully that answers that question a little bit. The final question that I had was, what do I get the most enjoyment out of? And my previous answer was, I'm a builder of things, and I still am. That is what I get the most enjoyment out of. After I left the Navy, I got into doing software development for a robotics firm in Vancouver, and after that was over, I started doing video game development kind of as my own thing, and eventually I found myself working at Electronic Arts and been in the game industry professionally ever since. And I just enjoy building things. And it doesn't matter if it's a physical thing or if it's a game, but that's essentially where I try to take my enjoyment from, is just seeing things that I've created come to life. And so I think that kind of wraps up today. I really hope that I've done a better job of kind of expressing myself with some of your questions. I would like to thank everybody for taking the time to watch this. Hopefully it's a bit shorter than the last one. I'll try to speak a little faster. I would also ask that you follow us, follow Canuck on YouTube. It's just YouTube/CanuckPlay. Follow us on Twitter. It's Twitter/CanuckGS, Golf Sierra. And as far as Twitter goes, we're sitting at around 930 followers. I think it'd be really cool if we could hit 1,000 followers by the end of July. That would be just a fun thing to see with the new game coming out towards the end of that month. I think it would be really cool if we could get up to 1,000. So please give us a follow on Twitter. And we also have Facebook. That is Facebook/CanuckPlay. So check those out and let me know if you've got any other questions that I've not addressed here today, and hope everybody has a great rest of the week. Thanks a lot.